So Petro is, this is big pasta. I don't know. I think to me, this and Venezuela are the biggest things he's done in terms of political moves, because 4 days into Petro's mandate, his foreign minister, Alvaro Levia, is in Havana with a Colombian government delegation. And Colombia has rejected the U.S. classification of Cuba as a state sponsor of terrorism and says they hope to resume talks with the ELN in Cuba. And we'll talk about the ELN from our friend Ted Cruz, who really doesn't like them because, according to him, you know, they're terrorists. But they are the National Liberation Army of Colombia, right? They are this part of Colombia, and they are basically a leftist organization, leftist sort of Marxist-Leninist group. The ELN really pretty much was defending a lot of the Colombian population during the time of the narco regimes and stuff. So they'll be described. I grew up thinking the National Liberation Army, the FARC, and all of these little groups were terrible, because that's what Univision and Telemundo and all these like mainstream media tell you. But the reality is they were pretty much created as a result of an opposition to the corrupt government. So that's we'll talk about that with Ted Cruz. But basically the next thing I wanted to point out was this right here. Let me go back to it. Anything to say on that, possible, before I continue?
No, fam. Keep going, please.
Okay, so again, from Casacha News, they kind of cover this and dove a little deeper into it. So there's a statement, right? A direct statement from Colombia. We highlight that Cuba was the cradle of the 2016 final peace agreement between the Colombian state and the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, the FARC-EP, which has been seen as an example for the whole world. Yes, because the Colombian state, we talked about this when Pasta and I were in Colombia, was able to form a sort of peace alliance where they stopped fighting with the FARC. And at that time, the Colombian state was still under a very Uribista government, which was the same type of narco paramilitary regime. And they still managed to have peace talks, which is what they're referencing here. We aspire to resume talks with the National Liberation Army, the ELN, in this land of peace in order to begin the path proposed by President Petro to achieve total peace. Thank you, Republic of Cuba, for your hospitality. We are honored to be here. Because Cuba was brokering this peace deal, they're thanking Cuba for that. And they're saying that Cuba doesn't deserve this label as a terrorist state, as a terrorist designation, which, by the way, the United States also wants to label Russia one.
Well, certain people do. Dick Blumenthal and Lindsey Graham played a warmonger patty cake on Dana Bash's show, talking about they want to list the Russian Federation as a terror state sponsor of terror. Just ridiculous. Go ahead, fam.
Right. So I want to play this video by Casacha News so you guys can hear what Petro is saying about this whole thing.
He decidido, en respuesta al gobierno venezolano, que
this is Petro naming a Colombian ambassador to Venezuela. The Colombian ambassador that he named to Venezuela is extremely pro-Simón Bolívar. And he is a journalist, which is very interesting, and pretty progressive from what I've seen. And the Venezuelans named their own Venezuelan ambassador to Colombia. This is a big deal. That hadn't happened in forever, because remember, the United States and Colombia were allies. They didn't recognize this whole thing with the government of Duque and didn't want anything to do with Venezuela.
Yeah.
Now, not only are they talking about it, now they each have ambassadors to each other, which is a big deal. So
this is unprecedented, fam. This is unprecedented times. People have to realize how big this is. Colombia, the watchdog, the puppet of the United States, was told, don't ever try to get relationships with Venezuela. They are the arch enemy. And now they are having relations. In fact, they look like they're welcoming more relationships. They're really open about it. So this is really unprecedented. Go ahead.
Designado embajador que tendrá como responsabilidad normalizar las relaciones diplomáticas entre los dos países, designar a Armando Benedetti como embajador de Colombia ante Venezuela, esperando el beneplácito de ese gobierno, y también con la ardua tarea de normalizar las relaciones entre los dos países, restablecer la institucionalidad que existía desde décadas antes para que los dos pueblos hermanos puedan guarecer sus derechos, garantizar sus libertades y lograr que entre Colombia y Venezuela se pueda construir riqueza para ambos pueblos. Gracias. He decidido, en respuesta al gobierno venezolano que ha designado embajador.
Yeah. He said, by the way, the difficult task of uniting our two nations. The difficult task.
Yeah. And who really let separation between the two countries that are literally next to each other? I mean, you have to understand that there's so many similarities between Venezuela and Colombia in terms of food, in terms of, there's a lot of similarities in general between those countries, from Venezuela, Colombia to Ecuador, and then Peru. There's a lot of similarities, but those two are right next to each other. And it's just, there was no reason for them to be apart. And this is something that goes back to the time of Bolivar and Santander. And so this is a big deal, as Pasta mentioned. This is a really big deal. So the next tweet I want to read, Armando Benedetti said he's going to be the ambassador to Venezuela. He's the Colombian ambassador to Venezuela. I will surprise you when we reach 10 billion in trade, when we benefit the more than 8 million Colombians living on the border. No imaginary line will separate us again as brothers. Thank you for your trust. They're trying to reestablish their relationships. They're calling the two countries brother, sister. And then Venezuela, soon to be ambassador to Colombia, in turn said, I will assume with great honor this responsibility entrusted by President Nicolas Maduro, because Nicolas Maduro named him the Venezuelan ambassador to Colombia. So this is the Twitter handle of the ambassador of Colombian ambassador to Venezuela. And that's who he is. You can see he's a journalist. He is in Bogota. And then Felix Plasencia is the Venezuelan ambassador to Colombia. He's a Bolivariano. That means he's a follower of not just Hugo Chavez, because that's technically what it means in these terms, but also from the, alluding to Simón Bolivar as well. But Bolivariano in these terms in Venezuela means Chavista, of the Chavista mentality, of the Maduro mentality. And so all of this is happening, guys. What Pasta mentioned was Western Sahara, Petro reestablishing relationships with them, Petro reestablishing relations with Venezuela, Petro reestablishing relations with Cuba, and saying, Cuba, we don't agree with the United States designating them as a terrorist organization, thanking Cuba, sending a delegation to Cuba. Cuba's persona non grata for the United States. I mean,
they are a state sponsor, according to the United States, by the way. They are one that, yeah. Please.
Yeah, but so for Colombia's president, days in after being inaugurated, days, to do all this that quickly, putting a large target. And so, of course, as we predicted, we said if Colombia does this, they're gonna be looked on to be cool, right? Well, here it is. Here's our good friend Ted Cruz, right? Our good friend Gusano Ted, and Casa Chan again doing great reporting for Latin America. U.S. Senator Ted Cruz goes on an anti-Marxist tirade on the Senate floor, triggered by Gustavo Petro's inauguration. This is just by his inauguration. We'll see what they say in the coming days by his actions that are now. He's He's going, I think, from my opinion, he's going the route of AMLO, Petro, it seems like. So let's just hear what good old Ted has to say, because he says so many wonderful things here we have to break down. He really does.
We don't support Marxists in Latin America, and any leftist leader who chooses socialism will be held accountable by the United States. Already, 9 governments across South America, Central America, and the Caribbean are controlled by socialists. All of these governments, with only one exception, are also overtly and ideologically anti-American. Colombia,
which one's not,
will become the 10th government in the region controlled by the hard left when the country's new president, Gustavo Petro, will take office. I am deeply worried that once he does, Colombia will join the ranks of anti-American forces in Latin America. Petro is the first openly Marxist to be elected president of Colombia.
Oh, shit.
He was brought to power by Colombia's leftist fringe, including guerrillas.
Okay, you got to pause that.
Colombians are well aware of what has happened in other...
Oz, sorry, can you bring us back in real quick, Fee? I just got to stop right there real quick because the level of bullshit and the lying there is just beyond ridiculous. Gustavo Petro is not a hard Marxist, guys. He was the one who they felt was the most leftist within the establishment that can broker certain deals and get things done. And I want to know, fam, who's out of the 9 governments? He said all of them are anti-United States. Which one of the socialist governments is not anti-U.S. that he was alluding to? Is he alluding to El Salvador? I guess I don't know what he's talking.
Yeah, that would be my guess. Because you have, let's see, who would be the government? We got Colombia, you got Cuba, Nicaragua, you got El Salvador, Venezuela. I think he probably is counting
Peru, maybe. Maybe he's saying Peru.
Argentina.
Yes.
Did I say Mexico?
Chile.
That's 8.
Okay.
Chile. That's
Honduras. 9.
So that's 9.
Yeah. So
10 would be Colombia
with 10. So we're missing one.
By the way, Ted, it's gonna be no. It's Colombia would be 10. Yeah, would be the 10th government is what he said.
We missed one. Yeah. We counted Colombia in that, did we not?
No, we hadn't.
Okay.
No, it's Nicaragua, Honduras, Mexico. Not Colombia, Venezuela, Peru, Chile, Argentina, El Salvador. Did you say Chile?
I don't know.
I think it was right, and then Colombia would be the 10th one. I think we might have missed one.
Let's play. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, we can play. Wait. But I wanted to say something else about what he said. He's not. Yeah, Petro is not Marxist at all. He's I would say progressive for Latin America, which is more progressive than we have in the United States. Because progressive in the United States doesn't mean that anymore. And you see how he acts like he has some sort of like God-given right
an alien or what do you call it? Inalienable rights.
Inalienable right to decide what type of government the people of Colombia should have.
We don't like their government. We can get rid of
They're anti-American.
We're not going to let any socialist government in the Caribbean and the global South at all. We will bring you to heel. You're not allowed to exist.
Marxists. Why do you care? What's it to you? Let them be. Even if you disagree with their government, why would you care? What's it to you? Why do you feel like you have to exert your jurisdiction? You have no jurisdiction. These are independent sovereign countries. The United States loves independent sovereign countries when they can manipulate them, but no, not when they don't, when they can't. So, okay, yeah, let's just hear the rest of his little rant. because it gets worse or better, depending on how you look at it.
Latin American countries that have elected or have seen leftists seize power. Cuba and Venezuela, for example. I don't want to see Colombia follow the example of other socialist governments in the Western Hemisphere. We know where that leads. Both Cuba and Venezuela used to be prosperous countries until leftists came to power. Castro and the communist revolution succeeded there. Maite Sonia fought in the counter-revolution against Castro. Mexican President López Obrador seems intent on making these trends worse. The Colombian far left gained momentum and Petro was elected. Petro says he will work hand in hand with Nicolas Maduro's oppressive regime in Venezuela.
Oppressive.
He is looking to work with the National Liberation Army, a terrorist organization in Colombia. He will embrace the FARC.
Bolivia.
FARC is an organization of Marxist-Leninist narco-terrorists. How great! An anti-American Marxist in a close ally of ours in Latin America. We don't...
This guy is one of the biggest freaking gusano pieces of crap in the face of the earth. Once again, I mean, how in the hell are they allowed? And should Ted Cruz be able to start screaming about what goes on in other countries? This ain't the U.S., Jack, but this is what they're going to sell, fam, and this they sell it well. There was even a little kind of sense of that when I went to those panels at Freedom Fest. Like the governments are socialist, they're communist, they're no good, they're anti-American. We need to get rid of them. But wait a second, we're at a libertarian Freedom Fest here. Aren't we for non-intervention? Like they're going to even have that dichotomy and that fight going on in that party. And that happens all the time. I mean, Rand Paul wrote a book, The Argument Against Socialism. I mean, like, hello, I get it if that's how you feel, but just the title alone, you're manufacturing consent for the empire to go back there, down there and remove those people and put the people they want in place. All the bankers who control all the resources, thrust their monetary system on these people with austerity measures, so they never get out of the shackles of these banks, of these international banks, fam.
He's like, this is hilarious. By the way, the country we didn't mention, I think, was Bolivia. So altogether, although together, yes, it would be 10. And then if we add Brazil, it would be 11, Ted. They are so scared, Pasta. They are fucking scared to death because what's happening in Latin America, it's not like everybody got together and was like, hey, we're going to all elect a bunch of commies and a bunch of socialists and like take over and go after the United States. This is the chickens coming home to roost. Literally, this is like after decades and decades of living, the consequences of sanctions, the consequences of blockades, the consequences of U.S. imperialism. This is that coming home to roost. This is all of that, right? And so that is pretty much what is happening here and what we're doing. And I think and I think it's freaking phenomenal that that's happening because it's finally seeing some pushback. It's finally seeing that this whole movement, this whole pink tide happen. And there's differences between the government of Mexico, with the government of Nicaragua, with the government of Cuba, with the government of Venezuela. It's not like it's just like they all agree on everything. In fact, that is one of the things that is going to be difficult is these countries all have different, they don't necessarily all agree on things. And there's some people that I wouldn't necessarily trust, like Gabriel Boric from Chile. I'm a little bit, he's not my favorite. He's a little bit too westernized, in my opinion. And there's just, a few things here and there. But it's I think to me, this is more of an economic alliance than an ideological one. This is more growing out of economic need for these countries to exert their sovereignty. Yes, there is ideology in terms of we want to be our own sovereign countries, but there's a lot of I think economic, right? There's economic gain to working with China. There's economic gain and military gain through working with Russia. There's economic gains when it comes to the infrastructure of these countries. It's just not economically feasible to ignore your neighbor. It just doesn't make any sense. Why would you ignore? Yeah, why would Colombia ignore Venezuela when Venezuela has oil? You know, it's just, yeah.
No, the chickens are coming home to roost, fam. I just, that's what this is about. And, I've been talking about once we exhaust ourselves financially which once again, I guess when we get money from the printing press, we might not ever run out of that. But once we exhaust our operations over in Ukraine and Syria and that region, we're going to bring it back home. And they're ready to put somebody in like a DeSantis who's just like Ted Cruz, who's just like Marco Rubio, who's just like all the lawmakers in our Congress. They're all gusanos. They're all pro-imperialist, and they believe they have a right to remove these governments down there because their last name is Latin. I mean, that's their whole mentality, that they're of this descent, and they're really freeing these people. We need not intervene. Yeah. We need not intervene. We should be staying out of it. Plain and simple.
They had another video. It's slide 44. So he mentioned, notice how he mentioned AMLO, right? Because AMLO is another guy that's putting a target on his back. He's going like far with a lot of things. Not wanting to nationalize lithium. He wanted all of Latin America. He wants all of Latin America to nationalize lithium for the entirety of Latin America. But he was able to do the Mexico. He wanted to nationalize all of Mexico's energy, but he wasn't able to do it. He was really close. So this guy is really, he talked about Julian Assange. So here is our good friend Ted's continued tirade. Now this time he is talking about Mexico. And he's talking about Gustavo Petro, about AMLO, and about AMLO desire to nationalize Mexico's energy. So here it is. And I think he was able to do it this time. Let's see.
In Mexico, we're seeing deepening civil unrest and the erosion of civil society. The breakdown of the rule of law across our southern border poses acute national security challenges and dangers to the United States. And when I questioned a Biden State Department official on Obrador's targeting of American companies and the nationalization of energy in Mexico, he wouldn't even admit that those were bad things. And if he's not willing to admit to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee that the leftist president of Mexico targeting of American companies and the nationalization of energy in Mexico are bad things, then we can be certain the Biden administration is also unwilling to convey that to Mexico.
So he uses this whole bullshit like as if Biden is some sort of Marxist. This is what irritates me the most. Oh, Biden isn't going after AMLO enough, in his opinion, right? So that means that Biden must be some sort of commie, and so I'm going to attack Biden from the right, even though Joe Biden has been just as antagonistic with Mexico, if not more, than Donald Trump. They don't like it. Why don't they like it, Pasta, that Mexico wants to nationalize their energy? Can you just give me some insight on that? Because I just don't understand.
That cuts into, listen, you need to read the Monroe Doctrine. That's our area down there. Even though it's not our country, it's on our hemisphere. We have a right to do what we want there. We have a right to steal those resources. And if he nationalizes his own oil, fam, that cuts into our money, into our profits. Then we can't extract and mine the lithium out of there on pennies on the dollar. We can't do that to their oil. Who is he to do that anyways? They've always been subservient to us. They need to stay that way. They bend the knee or we break them. That's it. That's the American empire.
Yeah, I mean, so again, the United States thinks they have jurisdiction over what another country does for its people. Well, so they have to vilify it as socialism. Like, don't call it socialism. I don't care what you call it. You know what I mean? This is beneficial to the people of Mexico. They should do what they want to do. If the people of Mexico want to legalize marijuana, if the people of Mexico want to nationalize their energy, let them. They wanted to nationalize lithium. Sure, they did it. And now, of course, they're moving. AMLO is pushing and pushing and pushing And what does that do? That's going to affect these multinational corporations, as Costa said, that exploit that exploit these people, this wealth that should remain in Mexico, just like the wealth that should have remained in Central and South America, and these countries that are resource rich never remains there. It gets extracted and goes elsewhere, specifically to the United States and to the West. But guys, you don't even get to see that wealth either. Not anymore. Not like you used to, by the way, because, you know, a lot of people would justify it, right? And be like, yeah, well, you know, if we do that, if we let those countries have all their stuff, then we're not going to have a good life. I mean, that's a very selfish way of looking at it. But you're not even tell me how great the life is when people can't even use air conditioning in their apartment because it's too expensive. Or when people come this winter in the EU aren't going to be able to heat their homes because it's too expensive. It's like a whole other rent to use gas. And so you have to think about those things too. It's not benefiting anybody except a very small group of people. So that's the way Ted Cruz and these people think of this sort of thing. So yeah, that's that section, and I think it's important to point it out.